Have you guys ever been afraid? What do you do, or what do you feel when you're afraid? What's the one feeling that comes to mind? When I saw the man standing at the end of the block, I was at the car. And as soon as I got scared, I started praying for protection. As I'm praying and I'm walking down the driveway, I heard footsteps running behind me. And you know when you watch those scary movies or the movies about kidnappers, how you think they're gonna put a bag over your head and just throw you in a van? So that's exactly what happened to me. So I was like, no way, this isn't gonna happen. So I'm walking and I turned, and I used to play basketball in high school, so I kind of did a pivot thing instead of turning all the way around facing the person. And because I was at that angle, the person was like this right in front of me. And so that's kind of how my face ended up becoming burnt from this side all the way across. Because he was at an angle, like where my mom is, and threw the acid this way, and as I turned, it kind of splashed across my face. That's the background of the story. I do want to say I'm very, very grateful to be here today. I was really, really nervous talking to you guys because this is the first time I've ever spoken to teenagers. I usually talk just in interviews with the news and stuff like that. So one thing I want to say is being your age, I know that you guys think that your parents might be strict, your parents might not want you to go out and live your life, and they're ruining your life, because trust me, I've been there with my mom. We've had so many fights when I was a teenager, and I'm only 22 now. So she raised me very strictly and very overprotective. And one thing I want to tell you guys today that's really, really important is make sure that you know who your friends are, and make sure you're aware of your surroundings. Because that night, things might have went differently for me if I was not focused on just one thing and maybe pay attention to what was going on around me before I left the car. Another thing I want to say that's very important that I learned is you have to learn to love yourself within. And I know that in high school everyone's concerned about what shoes you wear and what belt you have on, what jeans, what sweater, what coat you own, but at the end of the day, none of that matters when you're going through what I went through, which was I came from work, I was literally starving. I ran into the house as soon as my face started burning, and all I could think of is what just happened. I thought that someone pranked me. I didn't even know acid had been thrown in my face. I ran up to my dad, he was in the kitchen, and I was screaming. I was like, Dad, somebody threw something in my face and it's burning, and I started crying. And the minute he said, oh my God, it's acid, he started screaming, and he was saying call 911. My mom was in the bathroom. She flew out of the bathroom, and the second he said that, it was my brain went into slow motion. I had food in my hand, which is why my arms got burned. I'll show you. So I have burns here. And then it also burnt through my clothes. I have a burn here as well. And that night, I was wearing a thermal up to my neck and scrubs and a coat. And it burned through all of that. And I still have burns today. I have scars. I'm going through a lot of procedures, which I'll get into. But at the end of that, the whole point of what I'm saying is my life literally changed within the blink of an eye. And before I knew it, I was in the bathtub. My mom was trying to rinse my face off. She was trying to get me ready for the ambulance because they had called 911. And then all of a sudden I couldn't breathe. I'm drooling. My tongue was swollen. And I didn't know if I was going to die within seconds. So I started freaking out. I hurried up to get dressed. My mom helped me. The cops came. The ambulance still wasn't there. And they were asking me what happened. And I could barely speak. And all I could say was the ambulance needs to get here. I can't breathe. If the ambulance didn't get there when they did, I would not be here today. And I strongly believe that it's by the grace of God that I'm standing here because I was praying when it happened. So after that, I was in the hospital for about almost a little over 2 weeks. While I was in the hospital, I kept feeling this weird, like, little ball in my throat, like something was wrong, and I couldn't even swallow my own saliva. So I had a suction every single time there was too much saliva in my mouth. Then on top of that, the worst part of it was the pain, the anxiety, the not being able to sleep. I wasn't allowed to sleep on my back the whole time because they were afraid I was going to choke on my own saliva. And it was just a nightmare. There were times in the hospital where I would wake up and everything that I would eat, I would throw up out of anxiety. I could not speak. I lost my voice for the whole time I was in the hospital. I had a binder, I would page the nurse, and I would write. And I was in anatomy class yesterday. We were learning about the pharynx and the larynx, which is right over here and right over here. Both of them work in helping you swallow, but one of them is your vocal cords. And my anatomy professor told me that due to the damage of the acid, I'm lucky I even got my voice back because it sounded extremely raspy. I kept making a joke about how I sounded like a child going through puberty, like, you know, when boys get the example. So I kept saying that I sounded like a 12 or 13-year-old boy going through puberty because that's literally how it sounded. Now, I've learned, recently I've learned that I have a scar in my esophagus that's from here all the way down to here. And that scar, just like these, they lifted, which caused a narrowing in my esophagus, and it's not as flexible as it used to be. So I had to get dilations, which means they stretch it out. I had to get them every single 2 weeks. It was 8 to 10 days, and then 2 weeks, and then gradually, thank God it got better, because over the course of time where I couldn't eat, I lost 30 pounds. That was probably the most depressing part of it, because you know when you're really sad, or like you're craving something and you want to eat it, couldn't even eat ramen. I couldn't eat boiled eggs. Ensure was fighting down my throat. Yogurt, pudding, like little things like that were not going down my throat. So you can imagine, like, if I'm craving Chipotle, can't have that. If I'm craving, I don't know, like oxtail and rice, or even baked mac and cheese, I couldn't have that. Nothing. So it was a very, very dark time. I saw in the paper that some of you guys wanted to know how I stayed resilient and I kind of fought through the darkness. I think that praying really helped me, just like in the beginning, but also just having a background in like basketball, where you know when you're running suicides or 16s and your legs are burning, you're tired, you can't do it anymore. I've also been trained in not giving up, like fighting through the pain. And I think that, as well as my parents' support and everybody that's been there for me, really, really helped. Everyone would tell me, like, don't give up, you know, like, do what you want to do, because I want to be an obstetric neonatal surgeon one day, which is basically, it's 2 kinds of doctors. The obstetrics and gynecology is a female doctor, and then the neonatal is basically like newborns. So basically you do like surgical procedures and things like that on newborns that have complications, and you could also perform a C-section, things like that, as well as being like a regular physician or doctor. One other important thing I want to say is the mental breakdowns and the depression are so real. I went through a phase in my time, like around January, where I all of a sudden stopped taking my antidepressant medication, because I used to work in a pharmacy before I was injured, and I was literally looking at myself like I'm an ex-pharmacy technician, and now I became a pharmacy, meaning like I have so much medication, you name it, I have it. I stopped taking the antidepressants. I had so many side effects. The anxiety was through the roof. I literally one day went upstairs, I was hitting the wall, hysterically crying, screaming, kicking things, like, it's real. And after that happened, what helped me was writing. I would write every single morning, an email to a pen pal, or I would write in my diary. I found that really, really helps. And I think that that's another important thing that maybe you guys, if you don't want to share something with your friend, or you don't want to share something with your mom or dad, or anything it could be, or even just like a thought of how your day was, jot it down. You know why? Because you learn more about yourself. I learned so much about myself by writing. I would literally start writing about how my day went, this, that, and the third, about what I did, about what I ate, and then all of a sudden, I realized I wrote 1,000 words out of nowhere. And why? Because once your thoughts start flowing, everything that's buried in your subconscious mind that you're not aware of starts to come out and get lifted, you know? That's another really, really important thing that helped me. And if you can learn to, you know, condition yourself to do that all the time, or even just when you feel like it, even in your notepad, you know, we all have phones, something like that, very simple. What I do is I listen to music and I write so that I block everything out, or I write late at night when everybody's asleep.